right, hello, welcome. My name is Shaina. I'm an astrologer, and today we are talking about Neptune, specifically the big deal that is Neptune going from Pisces to Aries. This is a big shift. This is a generational shift. That's why we're beginning Gen Beta after having Gen Alpha since 2011 when Neptune was in Pisces. So today I will be breaking down everything about Neptune and Aries and Pisces and just in general, okay? We're talking about what Neptune represents, the time frame of when Neptune moves into what, how the past generations Neptune shifted and shaped them, and then bringing that into predictions that I have for this Neptune and Aries time. And then at the very end of the video, I will go through how to find what I will call your Neptune fortune. So in the next video, I'll be talking about Neptune transits through the natal houses, okay? So if you want to know what Neptune and Aries has in store for you and your own personal birth chart, that will be in the next video. When that video is up, I will link it in the cards right here. Also, I always love your guys' comments, so if you have any predictions for Neptune and moving into Aries that I did not speak about throughout this video, because I'll be forgetting a shit ton of stuff, okay? There's no such thing as a 100% comprehensive video, or else it would be a never-ending video where I talk about everything for the end of time, which I'm pretty close to doing, honestly, with these 1-hour videos. I'm not quite there yet. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so let's get the advertising out of the way before we get into the video. So I sell birth chart readings on my website, shainaemily.com. If you would like to know personally how this Neptune and Aries transit will affect you, you can purchase a transit and progress chart reading from me from my website. Oh, look at that work. Oh. How sweet. Okay. And then I also have an astrology TikTok at shaina.emily. I post super frequently over there and I go live every week. You can always check back on my bio on my TikTok to find out when I'm going live next. But let's just get into this video. Okay, so if you do not know, oh my God, I get to tell you, guess what? Neptune is moving into Aries. Yes, it's moving house. It's changed. It's packing ship or whatever that phrase is. And it's getting out of Pisces and it will enter Aries on March 30th, 2025. Now, it will be going retrograde back into Pisces at some point in 2025, but it is the first time that it is entering Aries, and by 2026, it will stay there. So the first question when we're talking about Neptune is, how long does it take for Neptune to move through a sign? Okay, I mean, the sun sign changes into Aries all the time, right? Why is it a big deal that Neptune is moving into Aries? So the reason why this is such a big fucking deal that Neptune is moving into Aries, I said that's a it's because it's the second slowest moving planet, okay? The only planet that moves slower than Neptune is Pluto. And I actually did a whole video because Pluto recently moved into Aquarius. It's now permanently in Aquarius. I did a video about Pluto and Aquarius. I'll link that in the cards. We'll be having a lot of shifts happening for these, past year up until the next year. And this is another one of those. I will actually be making a video about Uranus and its shift into Gemini pretty soon as well. Anyway, so because it is the second slowest moving planet, it takes about 164 years to orbit through 12 zodiac signs. So there's no such thing as a human being that has been alive for the entire Neptune transit. We should really ask turtles about this whole Neptune situation because I feel like they were probably the only ones alive at that time. So maybe they have some insight they can give us. It takes about 165 years to orbit through the entirety of the 12 zodiac signs. It takes about 14 years to move through just one sign. So the last time we had Neptune change sign, it was 2011. And that doesn't sound like it was that long ago in like the grand scheme of life, but that's been a pretty big chunk of mine and your lives since 2011. I think that if we were to go back to what we were doing in 2011, we'd be completely different people, and maybe some of us would barely be talking. I don't even know. So yeah, Neptune entered Pisces in about 2011, and it has stayed there for about 15 years. The last time that Neptune was in Aries was between 1861 and 1875. So I'll be going into it's kind of some things that happened during that time, but that's a long ass time ago. So yeah, as I said, Neptune will enter Aries on March 30th, 2025, and then it will stay in Aries until March of 2039. Oh my God. Time has been stressing me out this month. I don't know. I think it's just because we're having all these big changes and generational shifts and transit shifts. I think I'm realizing that everything is not what I thought it was. And like life as I thought it was really just a transit. Does that make sense? I don't know if you're experiencing that as well, but that's kind of how I've been feeling. And the Neptune in Aries generation represents Generation Beta, and Generation Beta will be born between 2025 and 2039, which matches up perfectly, exactly, pretty much with this Neptune in Aries transit. So yeah. Okay, topic number 2. What does Neptune represent in astrology/society? Now, I already have made a much more in-depth video where I talk about Neptune at a greater length and at a greater extent. It is my outer planets in astrology video, which I will link up here. So if you do not know about Neptune and you want to know what Neptune represents, you can watch that video for a more comprehensive idea. And I have timestamps, so you can skip right to Neptune if you're curious. But I do want to talk about it a little bit in this video, but not too much because I think it can be boring to the people that already know what Neptune is. So Neptune was discovered in 1846, not too long ago, honestly. Neptune rules fantasy, that fantasy place in our special place that we go to, that we hide away to, that, you know, nobody knows, that is our special little safety in our head and in our dreams and in our imagination. Neptune rules creativity, imagination, disillusionment, dreams, spirituality, religion, how we escape, how we, you know, our self-undoing, right? It's like that rabbit hole that we can't help but go down. It's very much like Alice through the looking glass, or like Alice going through, you know, the hole and she's transported into Wonderland. Those are all very Neptunian concepts. You know, how we escape drugs, sleep, sex, detachment, fantasy lies, alcohol, partying, relationships, whatever it is, that's Neptune, right? It also rules our intuition, our collective consciousness, our collective ideals, right? Even confusion. Is this real? Are we real? Do we exist? Do we not exist, right? I do think that when Neptune was discovered, also I think that another layer of consciousness came to be, because in the mid-19th century, I feel like we were really starting to, like, it's very like frontier-y, right? Like we're really like settling things. We're getting comfortable, you know, the Industrial Revolution is coming into play and technology is advancing, making our life easier. And I think within making our life easier, we start having more time to think, and we start having more time to like dwell and like try to like, you know, like be a philosopher and philosophize around the village square, right? And so I think that also like an extra layer of consciousness came to play where we realized, oh my gosh, right? Like we are all connected. There might be this other layer that we don't know, this other layer of mystery, this other layer of intrigue. You know, we know what we see, but what about what we don't see? And that is what Neptune rules. Everything that we cannot see is what Neptune rules, right? Neptune is all about Poseidon, right? The rulership of the ocean. And the ocean goes so deep. We haven't even discovered the majority of it. We can't even go down there. There's so many question marks, right? That's Neptune. You know, the ocean looks like this like fun, friendly, beachy area, right? Neptune, it has this mirage of this like wonderment. But when you actually go really deep and dark into the ocean, it gets really scary and most humans won't even be able to survive, which is kind of like the depths of Neptune. Neptune can be really fun and really like, ooh, like at the beginning, but then it can get really like dark, right? It's kind of like when you're like maybe like 5 hours, 6 hours into like an acid trip and you're like, oh, I've thought of all the good things now. I guess it's time I think about the bad things, right? That's Neptune. Are we even people, right? Like that's Neptune. Neptune rules cameras, right? I'm sitting here on, what is it? It's Tuesday. I'm filming this on a weird day. It's Tuesday, March 18th, and you're not seeing this on Tuesday, March 19th. You're seeing this on another day, and that is because of the magic of Neptune, because Neptune rules cameras. Also, speaking of the idea of pondering off and losing your train of thought, that's very Neptune as well. Also, Neptune also rules neglect, just being neglectful in general. And it also is like the energy that we tend to neglect in our lives the most. Whatever house and sign Neptune is in our chart is how we don't understand to act and what we don't understand how to do. Okay, so it's our weak spot. It's our soft spot in our chart. You know, I have a Neptune in the 7th house, so I have a soft spot for people. I have a Neptune in the 7th house, so I don't understand people, and that's why I'm very interested in astrology, right? You know, Neptune in the 4th house, you'll have a soft spot for your family. And because also Neptune is wherever you lack boundaries, with Neptune in the 4th house, you also lack boundaries around your family. You know, you also might have not gotten the most pristine, clean, you know, family growing up. There might have been some neglect as far as family goes. You know, again, you lack boundaries wherever your Neptune is at. So Neptune in the 5th house, you lack boundaries with your creativity, right? So this is somebody that writes songs about their heartbreak and uses the person's first and last name that broke their heart, right? Neptune is also how you fantasize and what you escape from or to. If your Neptune is in the 2nd house, you fantasize about being rich and making a bunch of money, right? But you also avoid checking the mail in case bills come, right? But also, even though you're maybe completely broke in real life, you sure aren't broke in your online video game. I'm sure with Neptune in the 2nd house, you are rich and wealthy online and in your imaginary fantasy lands, but in real life, there might be some more struggles. Now let's talk about Neptune as a collective generational influence, okay? Neptune shows a generation's dreams, what that generation views as being successful, the traits and qualities that generation puts on a pedestal and longs and yearns to be. Also, I find, this is just a personal thing I've noticed, is that I think we tend to label that generation for the opposite, if that makes sense. So the easiest example is like millennials, right? Their Neptune is in Capricorn, and what are they labeled as? Lazy. Millennials were always, especially by, you know, their boomer parents, you know, their Pluto and Virgo parents, you're lazy, you're lazy, you're lazy. You know, you have, you know, I'm super hyper controlling because I'm a boomer, Pluto and Virgo, and you are a Neptune and Capricorn, so you do not understand hard work. You do not understand how to pick yourself up by your bootstraps, which we'll get more into the Neptune and Capricorn thing going forward, you know, in the later part of the video, which if you want to skip to that, I do have timestamps. And so you therefore are labeled as lazy, which is the exact opposite of what Capricorn represents. Which is whatever I think the sign that Neptune is in represents, I think that generation, they get labeled as the opposite as a way to put them down, you know? It doesn't mean that they are or aren't that way. I'm just saying that that's kind of like that collective ideal, you know, Neptune is collective stuff. Also with Capricorn millennials, you know, they were promised the thing that their parents got, which is like a house and a job and like, you know, the American dream, building a structure, building a future. But when when millennials got older, that dream was shattered because of the housing prices and just how unproportionate the economy is at this current moment. And so that's kind of that Neptune, that's that shattering. You know, they were built up to really idealize this Capricornian way of life. And then when they were old, it was all shattered. It also shapes generational religious beliefs. It shows the artistic interests of a generation, and it shows the greatest ideals of what they dream and want to be of as a collective, as a whole, what they can get to. That wasn't a very good way of explaining it, but it's like collective consciousness, you know, collective goals. Oh, you know, I think about like a perfect example of like the highest ideal for a Gen Z was kind of being an influencer, right? Neptune and Aquarius, that was kind of the thing that was idealized for them, was being this like online Aquarian influencer. And lastly, I also think that whatever sign Neptune is in, and I think it also can show how open a generational's kind of like third eye is. How spiritually attuned and conscious are they? You know, sometimes with Gen Z, right, like Neptune and Aquarius, they're like hyper conscious, right? They're too conscious of their existence. They're too conscious that they're being perceived at all times, right? And so they stand still in a club. They've always been a little bit more aware of like the irony of life, I feel like Gen Z is, more than like more than like boomers or other generations, but also in the same vein, they're like so hyper aware of things that it gets them to be a little bit self-conscious. But anyways, I'm rambling. This is very Neptunian of me. Okay, now let's talk about Neptune as a transit. So basically Neptune as a transit, which again, this is great information for my next video, which is Neptune transiting the houses in a natal chart. So Neptune as a transit shows the area of life that you thought you once knew. And it's basically that area of life is now going to be shaken and questioned and like flipped upside down, right? Like you thought you knew this area of life, you thought you had it down, you thought you got it, but when Neptune transits through that house, wow, I don't know that thing anymore. You know, that mirror is broken. That illusion is shattered a little bit, I think. Or there puts a new illusion on it as well, because, oh my God, I didn't know this is really what that house is like. Right? Okay, so we'll disillusion myself over it and we'll hide from it and escape from it. Can also be a way that it goes. Also, you may spiritually start questioning that area of life. For example, if you have Neptune in the 6th house, maybe you've always been like a super you know, goes to the doctor, eats their fruits and veggies, kind of like health person. But then, you know, maybe you know, with Neptune moving through your 6th house, you had a bad experience with a doctor and what you thought you knew about health and wellness is shattered. And now you're trying to go towards alternative medicine and you're interested in looking at an herbalist, which is something that when your Neptune was not going through the 6th house, you would have never in a billion years been interested in. Maybe you also have a spiritual awakening in that house, or like a religious awakening in that house. You know, example would be like Neptune in the 10th house may experience a serendipitous moment at their workplace one day and quit their job. But then they decide to open a new business that brings their spirituality or religion into it as well. It can also activate creativity, especially moving through creative houses like the 5th. It can also activate self-undoing. You know, maybe you lose yourself through creativity and you go through a psychotic break because you lose yourself to this artist, you know, this actor role because you're in a play, and you lose yourself to it so much that you don't know what's real or fake anymore, and you don't know who is you and who is the character, right? Neptune adds a distorted, foggy lens to what was once a crisp, clear, updated prescription, right? You used to have that house before Neptune touched it. You were like, yes, I got 20/20 vision in this motherfucking house. Maybe, depending on what's in there. But the second Neptune moves in there, oh my God, it is all blurry. I can't see shit. I'm blind. I'm gonna run into this tree while I'm driving because I don't know what's going on. I have a headache because I don't have my glasses on. Ugh, does anybody else experience that? I get the worst headaches if I don't have my glasses on for like 2 seconds, right? Anyways, moving forward. Neptune transits also point to martyrdom, so it might also show where you need help and support as well as where you are expected to lend help and support for others. There may be major themes of caretaking and martyrdom in that transit house. But let's get into a summary of Neptune through the generations. We're going to start with Virgo Neptune and move all the way up to Aries. And I'm just going to try to be quick with this, but I do think it's really interesting. I did this for Pluto as well. I'll probably do this for Uranus as well, just because I think it will help you learn a lot about Neptune and how it translates. Okay, so with Virgo Neptune, this is the silent generation from 1928 to 1943. These are your depression babies, which makes sense, right? Success. I think I've talked about Neptune and Virgo quite a bit already in my what was it? It was like my detriment placements video, which I'll link up in the cards if you're interested in. Success was promised to the silent generation, as long as they did the daily meticulous work that they needed to get there. But then the depression happens, and even the most mundane of dreams were absolutely shattered, right? Which is very like Virgo Neptune. Like their dreams weren't even anything that sparkly or fantastic or interesting. They were like hyper mundane and like hyper simplistic, but even that was shattered, right? Even banks and other government institutions could suddenly not be trusted, right? Virgo Neptune. Neptune is the dissolving of things and the dissolution of things. So now these very structured Virgoan entities are not to be trusted anymore. The whole idea of Virgo is flipped on its head. People more and more desperate for the basic idea of work than ever. You know, even prohibition was occurring and ended during this era, which makes sense because that's very like Virgo Neptune. So it was going on for a part of it and then it ended for a part of it. And I feel like Virgo Neptune it's very sober, you know what I mean? And it's very restrictive, but the Neptune is the opposite of that. So it makes sense that it was the Virgo extreme for one part of Virgo Neptune and then the Neptune extreme for the other part. Also, I think this shows a devout belief in religion, which if you've ever been around anybody, like my Jewish grandparents are from the silent generation, they very much have a very like traditionalistic view of Judaism and how religions work. And like, I think also with Virgo Neptune, it also spoke about like neighborhoods being segregated by religious views, which is very interesting. It's very like Virgo Mercurial, like planning, like local community planning being based off of religious views, very like Virgo Neptune, which is interesting to think. I just say that because my grandparents used to always talk about how they were raised in a neighborhood that was like all Jewish and how that like doesn't exist anymore. So it just made me think of that. The next up is the Libra Neptune generation, which are mostly baby boomers. This is from 1942 to 1956, the very early baby boomers. This is definitely marked by a disjointed ideal of relationships, romantically especially. You know, with the people born in this generation, you know, 45%, nearly half of people born in this generation got a divorce by the age of 45. So it makes sense. You know, they really idealized love and relationships and idealized people and put them on the pedestal and really did not know how to handle those ideas of who they thought they were and what they thought relationships were shattered, right? I think there also might be kind of like a blind faith and trust and optimism towards religion as well, where you just accept accept what's taken to you at face value and just kind of go with the flow. Also, these people probably saw their parents like not go through any divorces at all, and they were kind of the first generation to really make divorces like trendy, you know? All right, then we have Scorpio Neptune. This is mostly baby boomers. This is a little bit of Gen X in here, but mostly baby boomers. So this is from 1956 to 1970. I also think that with Neptune, with Scorpio Neptune and Libra Neptune, I think both of these translate in divorce. These are both the two like marriage relationship entities. So I think they both have similar themes coming in. With Scorpio Neptune, it might have been less just because they didn't like the person and more because there was actual betrayals and like actual painful, like cheating, breakups of relationships. It's probably a lot more emotionally strenuous, and also might have broken up families a little bit more than just a Libra Neptune would. But also the idea of free love and free sex that they saw everybody kind of get to take part of as children, right? Growing up mostly in the 70s as kids and seeing everybody kind of just like, oh, free love, oh, this and that, right? And then when they get older and they start to try to do that, it's like the 80s and it's the AIDS epidemic, which is very Scorpio Neptune. I think I also spoke about Scorpio Neptune in a previous video. Also, it's like the crack epidemic, which I think more than drugs, it was about the idea of questioning the government, right? Because there's that whole issue of like, oh my gosh, like the FBI, wasn't it the idea like the FBI was like scattering crack around America or in like more impoverished places? Like, wasn't that like an FBI or like something along those lines? I could be totally wrong. I'm so sorry, guys. But it was just basically a big idea of questioning the government. You could not trust what the government tells you anymore, like they thought that they could, especially when you grow up in like the mid 50s or 60s where it's all about the American dream and the government is this picture perfect thing. It was like, wow, we actually can't trust them and they actually don't have our best interest at heart, you know? Everything they once thought they knew was wrong, you know? This is hard. This is a hard energy. This is intense illusions being shattered in the darkest of ways. I also think with Scorpio Neptune, there's this do or die mentality with religion where it's either you're all in or all out and that's it, right? Like I feel like Scorpio Neptune was really the first generation to bring up the idea of atheism, which is very scorpionic, very rebellious, very fixed energy, very much, you know, fixed energy Neptune, right? Like I do not believe in this because I'm a Scorpio. I'm anti-you. I'm pro-Satan even, you know, very like also like the satanic panic and stuff. But yes. Okay. So I'm going on way more than I want to about this though. So basically, you know, religion above all mentality or anti-religion above all mentality. But let's go into Sagittarius Neptune, which is Gen X, which is 1970 to 1984. They saw their parents partying and enjoying themselves, but by the time that they were old enough to do the same, the fear of STDs and everything just kind of plagued them from being able to enjoy themselves, right? They had just gone through the Scorpio Neptune period and everybody was like scared and freaking out. They just didn't get to be careless like other generations did, right? This also might have been the first idea of like, oh no, like climate change, like we might be affecting the world and like really screwing it over for the future generations, right? Sagittarius Neptune. This was kind of like the last generation also left to fend for themselves, right? The kind of concept of like inside or outside. You're either spending the day inside or you're spending the day outside. You know, get home when the light posts turn on, right? Or whatever it is. It's 10 p.m. so the TV is reminding the parents that the kids are out, right? That's very like Sagittarius Neptune generation. They just kind of like their parents just kind of let their kids roam around and they left their doors unlocked. And then what came of it? What was that shattered illusion that came of it was that everybody's not friendly. And there's a bunch of missing children from this generation. This is the serial killer generation. It's the, you know, this is Sagittarius energy. It's mutable energy. This is when we started to realize that we couldn't be as free and have as fun and, you know, have as much fun and just like be as social and talk to everyone as we thought we used to, right? Sagittarius is very careless. So now we can no longer be careless with our children. Now we can no longer be careless with our life in general. That fantasy has been broken, right? This is also the generation where kids really started rebelling against religion and speaking up. And like, it wasn't just like maybe people that were a little bit older now that were anti-religion. With Sagittarius Neptune, it was like kids that were Gen X that were going to youth camp and weren't just happy anymore, right? So we started to see the crackings of that with Sagittarius Neptune. Now let's move on to Capricorn Neptune. I already did speak about this a little bit earlier, but these are your millennials. This is from 1984 to 1998. So I've kind of already mentioned this, so I'll say this really quickly, but basically the idea is that boomer parents got houses for like $30,000 or something insane, you know, pensions, retirement, didn't even have a credit score, you know, that concept didn't even exist for most of their life. And then Capricorn Neptune is kind of like the first generation dealt the burdens of a hyper corporate country is kind of how I see it, right? It's kind of like the guinea pig generation for even something like credit scores. Like it's kind of the first generation to have that for their entire life. You know, there's lots of issues around adulting. The word adulting was created when Capricorn Neptune was at its height, right? Kind of like waiting for that magical time when they get older and start dressing and acting like their parents, but that time never comes. They're like in their 30s now and they're still wearing like band tees and like saying fuck you to their parents. Like what's going on? How, you know, nothing's really changed, right? That's Capricorn Neptune. You think you're just gonna wake up, grow up, and like maybe with with Capricorn, like when you're 30, you thought everything was gonna magically shift and change, and it can be really daunting and confusing when you're still the same person and you're not suddenly, you don't wake up in a suit the next morning or something, you know? Or, you know, maybe you'll go the other way and you'll play pretend and have imposter syndrome because you're like an insecure corporate girly and you don't know how you ended up there, and so, you know, now you're all self-conscious about it or something because you feel like you have an imposter syndrome, right? Also, you know, living through the housing crisis and the recession is also very Capricorn Neptune. You know, everything that we thought, all the structures that we thought were in place for the future of millennials was gone, right? Even the idea of Social Security. I don't know if that'll be here by the time millennials are older. Also, I think it was the first generation as a whole to really question and disobey and be smarter than religion as a child, right? Sagittarius Neptune just kind of says, this is what I believe and I'm going for that in like a very positive way. Capricorn Neptune is going to be the first generation that really sits down and says like, no, I'm literally not going to church anymore, and like you really can't make me, and I won't even go to just appease you because I'm not a Sagittarius Neptune, I'm not a mutable Neptune, I'm a cardinal Neptune, and I say no. And you know, where Gen X was not religious, but I do think they were spiritual, I think that millennials were just atheistic and depressed with Neptune and Capricorn. Okay, next up, Aquarius Neptune. This is Gen Z. This is from 1998 to 2012. Aquarius Neptune was disillusioned by the internet. They grew up with no boundaries, basically. As far as like culturally, right? Very like Aquarius, right? Interconnected consciousness, Aquarius Neptune. The first generation to be disillusioned by what technology might bring. We thought that technology would bring us all together, but it's actually separated us more than ever before. Very Aquarius Neptune. And also I think Aquarius Neptune is like, Gen Z thought they were going to be the generation where all that shit's like accepted, right? Like gayness is accepted, race doesn't matter as much anymore, or people are more fighting for the underdog and fighting for those that are oppressed and so on and so forth. And I think that that's the shattering of Gen Z, if I'm being honest with you. I think the shattering will be realizing that we will always be stuck with these sort of ideologies of black and white, gay, straight, girl, boy, right? Neptune and Aquarius brought the dissolving of genders. And so I think that that will be a Gen Z's hard thing to realize, is that they're not going to be the generation that saves the day, and that there's no such thing as, you know, everybody being happy and living in collectiveness. And this isn't my political commentary. This is just what I think will happen as Gen Z gets older, is that ideology will be shattered and broken. Also, as far as technology goes, right? Technology was the thing that brought great joy and fun into your life, right? But it's also the thing that's probably going to ruin your life when you're older. Let's be honest with Aquarius Neptune. And I think that we'll see, especially with Neptune moving into Aries and Pluto already in Aquarius, this hyper lead towards kind of technology not helping but hindering, or whatever it may be. And so I definitely think it can be like the demise of technology, or like the demise of what technology can do to a person, will be seen through Gen Z when they grow older, especially like I think even like medical conditions, as far as like what medical conditions will be caused by us staring at screens for our whole lives, right? That's also very shattering of that illusion as well. You know, growing up you saw a very drab and conservative world and wanted to change it. You know, I feel like Neptune and Aquarius realized that we have free will very young, and they realized, and I do think they're kind of higher up on the consciousness and awareness level than some of the other generations, but sometimes too much, as I mentioned, right? They strive to hang out and party in groups, right? They like the idea of hanging out in parties and groups, but in reality, they only do those things online, right? So what was supposed to be the most social generation with these Aquarius energies became the most antisocial generation, which is also very much that idea of whatever that sign gets said that they're good at, that generation will be said that they're bad at. So for example, like Neptune in Aquarius is all about, like, Aquarius is really good at making friends. And what is Gen Z really bad at? Making real life friends. They're great at making parasocial relationships, but not in real life relationships. You know, so chronically online that you don't know how to hang out in real life. That's Neptune. It's like this dissolving, right? This dissolving thing. Defiant of religion or no interest in it. I think more than anything, I think Gen Z was being raised by a generation that just, you know, maybe some Sagittarius Neptunes coming in, you know, they just didn't care as much about religion, and so they were just a little bit more distant and detached from it, would be my guess. Astrology being of interest makes a lot more sense to the Neptune and Aquarius generation. Like, you know, I'm not even gonna try to go to church. I'm not even gonna try to entertain it. And I know that there are still, like, religious people within, like, Gen Z, but I'm saying, like, as a whole and as a collective. Like, I'm generalizing here because that's the whole point of it. Something that nobody's ever brought up is that Neptune and Aquarius, Gen Z finds interest in the culture of their family, but not the religion of their family, right? Their parents will try to pass down their religious views, but they go, I don't want anything of that. I want you to teach me your language. I want you to show me what it's like around where you came from. I want you to teach me the cultural stuff of your life, not the religious stuff of your life, right? But instead the religion, what was passed down. So I don't know, just putting that out there. That's just something I was thinking about. All right, Pisces, Neptune. This is Gen Alpha. This is from 2012 to 2025. Okay, so this is total brain rot generation, right? It's like understanding irony before they could even understand simple addition, right? To me, that's like Pisces, Neptune. Pisces is like everything beyond the realm of consciousness. And so they understood the deep lore of like memes and like internet jokes, but yet they probably don't know the alphabet, right? That's like very Pisces, Neptune, like this high level of consciousness, but then this like low level of like basic Virgoan skills, right? It's almost like they were too connected of a generation, so much to where all the lines are blurred and the boundaries are non-existent, disillusioned by helping the world also as well. Like, I feel like maybe Gen Alpha will grow up or is growing up, but this is just my theorizing, growing up believing truly that world peace will come from their generation, right? Because Gen Zs were like, yes, like we will get these like ideas all the same, and we will want to help each other and support each other and blur all these lines, and who cares about your race, color, or creed, right? And so then Pisces Neptune goes, well, if they fix that, then I am going to save the world, right? My generation, I'm Generation Alpha, you know, the name of it even. I am, you know, world peace, you know, Neptune and Pisces, everybody and everything will be able to coexist. And when they grow up, they will be harsh, they will go through the harsh realization that that is not true. I wonder if they'll get pegged for not being real, like not being religious at all, not being creative at all. I wonder if they'll get pegged for being like the online generation where everybody just takes AI stuff from everyone else, and so there's no individualized creativity. And maybe we'll also say that they're like an empathy-less generation. Like maybe we'll say like they don't understand at all how to help others. They don't understand at all how to put themselves in, you know, other people's shoes, or, you know, they're absolutely clueless when it comes to reading the vibes of the room or something. I don't know. That's just my thought process, because it's like what I was talking about with the opposite. Pegged is the opposite, right? You know, I wrote like, you know, growing up, that idea of we're all connected and we're all the same will be shattered when Gen Alpha finds out that people are different, that people are individuals, and we all have a unique individual birth chart. And that even though it did not seem like everybody's different, because, you know, you guys all got along while you're playing Roblox online, in real life, there are actually strong differences, you know, culturally or societally that impacts people that they might not realize or understand when they get older. Also, a hyper exposure to drugs. This pandemic occurred during the height of this era, 2015, which makes sense. A lot of like, I feel like designer drugs, or even like ketamine, or like, you know, legalization of marijuana, all that kind of stuff. Recreational drug use got very casual. I'm sure a lot of Gen Alphas were raised with parents who smoke weed out and about, like they smoke, like we would drink alcohol. You know, I'm sure the exposure is different, you know. Also, I think that there's no interest in schools or structure, and I think that this generation believes that their dreams will come true just by dreaming it, or just by believing it. Definitely lots of shattered dreams and fantasies of what they think the world will be. I think this will be one of the hardest realizations, if they do ever come to terms with with realizing it. I said I do think this generation as a collective will be the most helpless when their dreams do not come true. Yeah, I agree. I also wrote they're not just millennial burnouts. They were never burned in the first place, right? Millennial burnouts had to stress themselves out to get burned out. I don't even think Pisces Neptunes will stress themselves out in the first place. Total blind faith in whatever they believe. Like, I do think religion will go through a renaissance with this energy. Like, I wonder if they'll become more religious, or if there'll be like a new religion, or if they'll just be more spiritual as a whole, or whatever it may be. It makes sense that, you know, astrology really got popular during this time. Also, when I said, you know, the drug glamorization, I wonder if there'll be more long-term effects of drug use, obviously, but also I wonder if when they're older, drug use will not be legal. That's another thought. Like, what if when Neptune goes into something else, I don't know, like, what if, like, when they're older and they're so excited that they finally get to, like, recreationally use drugs, and what if it's all illegal when they're older, or, like, there's, like, a prohibition during, like, their 20s or something. Also, this is the pandemic children, which makes sense because they don't understand how to live in the real world. They were, you know, kind of raised in this sort of, like, quarantined area for a lot of their, you know, formative years. Very Neptune and Pisces. Also, I said they're either hyper coddled or hyper neglected. Also, during Neptune and Pisces, there is the height of filters and plastic surgery. So they're very disillusioned by what people look like and what they might look like when they're older, because they're not going to look like what everybody looks like online when they're older, because everybody does not actually look like that because of filters and plastic surgery. Also, a big theme with Neptune and Pisces was everybody talking about their mental health. Even on TV shows, like, everybody started talking about mental health, started talking about depression, started talking about this or that or medication or whatever it may be, and manifestation, right? So I wonder if they'll also be disillusioned by mental health and manifestation, right? Everybody was into manifestation during this time. That was like common knowledge, common words, common lingo, right? And so I wonder if their, like, manifestations will be shattered, or maybe, like, their idea of, like, the mental health support that they might get in the future will be shattered because you don't actually get that, right? Like, we're trying to be all, like, mental health advocacy-y with Neptune and Pisces, and then they'll find out, like, oh, in the real world, nobody gives a shit if you have ADD. Like, they don't. Like, nobody gives a shit about what mental health condition you have in the real world, especially when we're out of Neptune and Pisces, so that may be a hard pill for them to swallow as well. Okay. Now, I feel like I've already talked for so long. This is already a video in itself. All right, now we're in finally to the bulk of the video. So now we're into our current sphere, which is Aries Neptune. Okay, this is Generation Beta. Generation Beta is occurring between 2025 to 2039. That is when Neptune will be in Aries. So growing up, this is my idea for Aries Neptune individuals, okay? Gen Beta. So growing up, they saw everyone be individuals, right? They see lots of people run their own business or dream of doing so, right? Like, I'm self-employed. I run my own TikTok content. I sell my bakery treats on TikTok shop. I don't know, right? Like, everybody's kind of very individualistic nowadays. Maybe, you know, we're seeing a lot of people that are independently employed or single and enjoying it. Single and not married and okay with it. And is married and okay with not having kids. Like, it's a much more individualized, create your own destiny sort of life that we're at right now. This is a very individualistic generation, especially even with technology. You know, even though it's that kind of idea, right? Technology brought us together only to bring us farther apart, only to make us more individualized, only to make us live more on an island because we're able to still be connected via technology. I think that Generation Beta will grow up with a disillusioned view of individualism, a disillusioned view of individualistic thought. And I think that we will see Generation Beta as followers, right? That is why they are literally called Generation Beta, because they're after Generation Alpha. And so I think that, you know, Aries gets pegged as being the great leader. And so I think that we will see Generation Beta as terrible leaders, as just the followers of just going with whatever everybody else goes with, is kind of my thought. Or if they do individualism, it'll be hyper fervent and hyper aggressive and just too extreme to where it's just horrendously isolating and not helpful at all. I think that we will see them not as leaders, even though they will see themselves as leaders. I think we will see them as weak and childish and immature and not at all ready to make the decisions or lead the way, right? They will grow up expecting to be able to get to make their own choices and get to lead their own life and get to grow up and decide what they do. But I think that when they grow up, those choices, for some reason or another that I do not know because it's just so far in the future, I think for some reason those choices will be taken away from them. And I think that they will be very jealous of the individualistic life that we all were able to lead. And I think a lot of that has to do with, again, the rise of AI. I do think that it will take on like a whole separate consciousness or something along those lines, right? Like during the Pluto, Aquarius, Uranus, Gemini, Aries, Neptune configuration. And so I think that maybe with the extreme rise of AI, maybe when they're older, AI will take over all the jobs and all the things and things of that nature. And so you just don't get to be a person who gets to go on your own hero's journey anymore. Like, cause that is taken away. Anyways, I could theorize about this forever. Let's move forward. Okay. Also, I'm thinking maybe they dream of war. They dream of bloodshed. They dream of violence. Like that's for some reason something that it could even be like, we are going to fight the good war. We're going to fight the good fight. They could maybe even be disillusioned by that. And then when they're older, they lose the fight or they don't get to even fight in the first place. Disillusioned by their goals, does not know how to set goals or sets too many goals and does not know which one to choose. Or picks one goal and sticks with it and does it to sort of like the bitter end, like, you know, the Aries, like the all fallen end, you know? I think that this generation will be highly creative in war and in war strategies. I think they'll have highly creative opinions and highly creative survival skills. I think they will need to. I think they will also be disillusioned by survival and what it means / how to survive, which I will touch on more in the Neptune in Aries overview in general. But like Aries is all about survival. And we're now at this point where we don't really need to do much to survive, right? We're kind of at this point where it's like, what is it? High technology, like low life. You know what I mean? Where technology kind of does everything for us and we don't really have to think much. And so this generation beta will have no idea how to fend for themselves. Will have no idea how to survive without all of these external dependencies that we've gotten so used to. GPS, phone, internet, whatever it is, so on and so forth. I think this will be actually a religiously fervent generation. I think this will be the first one in a while. I think that we haven't really had a generation this religiously fervent in sense, like probably like the Scorpio, Neptune generation, Virgo, probably like Virgo, Neptune as well. You know, Libra, which is more like blind faith. Anyways, also I think they will have some volatile compassion and selfish empathy. I do think these will be like little crybabies their whole life a little bit. Neptune in Aries is kind of that generation in my mind. Oh, you know what it also is like losing individualism, right? Like Aquarius Neptune has put so many labels on everything that the labels don't mean anything anymore because they've been so overused kind of situation in my opinion. And I feel like that will cause identity issues for generation beta. Because like the labels don't mean anything anymore, but yet they still are labels in the first place for a reason. There's obviously, I'm sure there's a lot of good things that come with Neptune and Aries. Like maybe there will be some passionate, creative ideas. Anyways, okay, let's move forward. So what happened during the previous Neptune in Aries? So the main thing that people talk about is the American Civil War and Reconstruction. You know, Pluto was in Taurus during the time, so there was a war for ownership and how goods and produce is regulated and produced, which in that day and age, it was slavery, right? We used slavery to get our goods. Pluto and Taurus, right? Slavery, Pluto, Taurus for goods. And so when that war happened, that Neptune and Aries war happened, it was about Pluto and Taurus, which was like slavery. Now, what is Pluto in an Aquarius? So I think if there is war, it'll be for AI, you know, per reasons. So Uranus was also in Gemini, which is very strange, when during the last Neptune in Aries. there was this extreme split of ideals from Uranus and Taurus, right? Where it's black and white. You're on one side or another, which we're seeing right now. You're a Democrat or Republican, and that's it. When Uranus went into Gemini, there is this new revolutionizing of local areas, right? Local war with it being in Gemini, it being in your neighborhood, right? Down the block with Uranus and Gemini. Neighborhood wars, civil Uranus and Gemini war, Neptune in Aries over slavery, Pluto in Taurus, right? And it'll be like the AI revolution with Pluto in Aquarius. So that's basically the main thing that happened during the Neptune in Aries. There's a billion other things that happened, but this video is already so long that I want to finally get to the bulk of this video, which is my predictions for Neptune in Aries. So obviously, piggybacking off of what I just said, my first prediction is that getting into some form, shape of a war, because of Aquarian-like things, which is either having to do with like race, gender, or creed, or sexuality, or online internet AI stuff, right? That'll divide us, okay? But also, I think the biggest difference is that I think this will be more of like a simulated war. I think the idea of simulated warfare is going to come up exponentially, right? Like, warfare where we're sitting at home playing war, almost like a video game, right? Uranus and Gemini, Neptune and Aries, like a little kid boy playing their war video game, but it actually has an impact on the world, you know, Pluto and Aquarius, right? Early video games were groomed to put little kids into the military. That's like what they were for. That's what most of the video games were for. And so it's like, we're finally going to put that to use, is my thought. Also with Neptune and Aries, right? This is like it's like wars, but being disillusioned by war. So that's why I'm like, it would make sense if it was like a simulated war, or like you weren't actually physically in the war, even though it was happening, something along those lines. And everybody's been saying more. So we all know that. I just wanted to add my extra little thing of like, you know, Aquarius technological advancements in war will be huge. So much so that I just don't think that war will even look how it used to, or play out at all like how it used to in any way, form, or shape. I also wouldn't be surprised if there was a new global power that came to be during this time, honestly. But basically, when Neptune moves out of Pisces and into Aries, this is going to feel like we're waking up from a dream. Really. Like this is a big deal, guys. We're ending one Neptune whole cycle and starting a new one. Neptune going into 0 degrees in Aries is a huge, huge, huge deal whenever any big transit hits 0 degrees Aries, because it is like a refresh. It is like a start over, okay? Waking up from like a coma, like waking up from like a drug-induced slumber for the past 15 years, waking up from this like you know, like doom scroll hell, you know. I feel like it's just, I do feel like it's a little bit of a reset, and I feel like we should take it as that way and use it as an opportunity to reset as well. I do think there will be like a real like main character syndrome coming in with like Neptune and Aries. Maybe less like Leo, like less like in a fun way, you know, and more like in a I am right in all ways at all times. Like everything that I believe is accurate and true and correct, and I will not be questioning it. I will just be moving forward and steamrolling through anything that you say, right? This is a time of stark individualism, I think, or as much as it's like stark individualism, it's also the loss and disillusion of individualism as well. Also, I was wondering, I was like, maybe we'll see a resurgence of the jock. We have not gotten that for a while. We kind of have, and that was another thing I was going to talk about. Neptune and Aries and the breaking down of masculinity. We've already kind of started to see this. We've already kind of started to see a lot of stereotypical masculine things starting to get reconstructed, right? Men are not the sole providers anymore. Men are not building houses, you know, for their family like they used to. They're not going off to war as much as they used to. They still are, but it's not at the level that they used to be getting drafted, let me tell you. You know, there is kind of like a little bit of a dissolution of masculinity going on, especially with Neptune going into Aries. I feel like there will be this idea of this idealized man, perfect man, how to be man, right? But it'll just be this idea that everybody's, or all the men are chasing. That's not true. I also think that masculinity will weaken as well. We're already starting to see this, right? And I think we will lose the ability to build things for ourselves. I think also with Neptune and Aries, we already don't really know how to do that. You know what I was also thinking about with this energy? This energy definitely gives me the vibe of like, you know, I feel like this is true with everyone. I feel like you could ask your boyfriend or like your brother or like a male friend and be like, would you be able to build a house? And I feel like every single man ever would say yes. I feel like every single man would say, yes, of course I'd be able to build a house. It's easy. I'd be able to do it. But they don't. And that's because Neptune is in Pisces and everybody was lazy. With Neptune moving into Aries, I feel like everybody will be disillusioned into thinking they can build a house, but they can't. They actually have no idea how to do any of this survival skill stuff, right? Like going off into war. Oh wait, we're actually not fit for war. We have no idea how to do any of this survival skills stuff. We have no idea how to do any of this manly man stuff. We haven't needed to do it for so long because we're more of a developed society and we've been in these like Aquarius Pisces realms where everything's like very advanced and we just rely on that. And so Neptune in Aries says, if you have to rely on you, would you be able to? Would you be able to rely on just you? Probably not. And maybe that's what Neptune in Aries is going to highlight in some way. This extreme codependence we have, right? We are so far from our like caveman survival ways. And I feel like that's what Neptune in Aries will kind of highlight, is that none of us know how to fend for ourselves. Also, I said with Neptune in Aries, I wouldn't be surprised if we're entering a war right now and we don't even know it. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a war already going on that we don't know, a war that's about to go on that we don't know about, or just in general being kept in the dark about war, right? Neptune, being disillusioned and being not told about what's really going on in war. Strikes and riots, I think, are going to be more of a theme. I think that people are going to take a more active approach to fighting the system. We have Aries, Gemini, and Aquarius coming into play. This is not energy of like Pisces and Taurus, which just hangs back and like rallies from the sidelines. This is energy that takes things into their own hands and says, if you don't care about this, I do, so I don't care that you don't. Neptune and Aries, I am like a spiritual warrior of one. You know what I mean? I will fight back and unionize. I will strike. I will riot. I will do this on my own, and I don't need you to do this with me, you know? And so I think there'll be a lot more like independent crime, I wonder. Huh. Okay, Neptune and Aries, also religious warfare. I think that, you know, obviously the Middle East shit's coming to a head. It's that idea of my religion is the right religion, right? A lot more fervent than we have been the past few generations. Neptune and Pisces, like, all religions are interconnected, right? They're all the same. I get a little of every religion and it helps me, yay, right? Neptune and Aquarius, we don't need religion. What we need is to understand people and society and sociology and that kind of stuff, right? Neptune and Capricorn, I'm too depressed to be religious, right? The world has it out for me, you know? This is the first generation in a while, which I think will be religious. I also wouldn't be surprised if like some kind of religion like Satanism or something that involves like an individual being the leader of their religion, I think will come to rise. Like, I think that will be a major religion. If there's any religion that's like, it doesn't have to be specifically Satanism, but you know how Satanism is the idea of like you, whoever you are, it's, you know, he's an Aries, also Anton Saint-Gervais is an Aries, and now I'm putting it all together. You know, he's like, you are your own God, right? You are God, you are your own God, you are your own leader, you are your own religious deity. You know, it's very like Neptune and Aries, you know? So I think it'll be a religion really talking about individualism or you being your own God, I think will be the theme. Or again, if that's not your ideology, like Muslims and Christianity and Judaism will still exist, right? And so I think that those religions will become more aggressive, you know, will become more fervent. And they will say, we've been living in peace for too long. My religion is the only way. Excuse me. Let me say that, you know. With Aries, Aries is like it's like basic man, right? Basic human. It's just like the real physical me, like I am me, right? And so with Neptune and Aries, this is talking about the dissolution of like, I think it can talk about the dissolution of like real humans and like real people, right? Like we won't know. I really think that like robots or whatever we'll call robots are going to take over. I know I sound so goofy, but maybe not like takeover, but I wouldn't be surprised if we aren't sure who's part robot and who's not. Maybe all humans will have parts of electronics in us and we'll be tracked, or we'll have chips, right? Like, we won't be full humans, or there'll be a dissolution of like real human connection, as there already is, especially with Pluto and Aquarius, and everything will go to simulation, right? This real like physical Aries, me person, will it even exist after this transit? I don't know. You know, kind of going back to that sort of like main character energy, everybody will want to be the hero. Everybody will want to be the main character. Everybody will think that them and them alone is going to be responsible for saving the world. Very Neptune and Aries. Neptune and Aries just gives super like Superman. I feel like is very like Neptune and Aries. Like, oh, I am super person. I can do whatever I want, and I believe that I can do whatever I want, right? And I am unbreakable and cannot die. But then you can. And okay. Escapism through war and conflict, which is a really interesting idea. I don't know how that will translate, but instead of escaping through escaping, we'll be escaping through conflict. So maybe we'll just, a lot of displaced anger is kind of what it's sounding like. I think also in a good way, as a whole, we'll be feeling less sleepy and less lazy as a generation. You know, with all those Pisces, Taurus planets that were going on in the generationals for a while, everyone was pretty sleepy. You know, we were all with Sleepy Joe on that one. You know, I think that in a good way, this will bring a little bit more of a pep into people's step, right? We've got some Aries, Gemini, and Aquarius energy. We've got some active energy going on. Maybe everybody will take a little bit more of an active approach to life instead of sitting back in the passenger seat like we did during Neptune and Pisces. Sorry. This is interesting. I always forget what I write sometimes. I wrote complex spirituality of Neptune and Pisces being traded out for the simplistic color by numbers spirituality of Neptune and Aries. That's valid. That's valid. Also, I think there'll be more of an active way of approaching or even like attacking dreams. Like, we'll attack dreams, right, Aries, with vigor and focus and passion, right? Instead of just like dreaming about this thing I'm gonna do. Oh, we're all gonna own our own business. That's what everybody says. I'm gonna own my own business. I'm gonna dream about it and dream about it and dream about it, right? With Neptune and Aries, we might actually do something about the damn thing, which is good, I will say. Boundaries, I think, are actually going to be stronger. I think that, you know, there's less of the boundarylessness that Neptune and Pisces had. And I think that will put up more walls. And that could also have to do with immigration as well. I think that Neptune and Pisces was a time where there was more of like a open door policy. And with Neptune and Aries, there's probably going to be more of like a you're this and I'm this and we're separate and the walls are coming up sort of energy. So it's funny that's literally walls, you know? You know, Aries is very literal too. So if Aries is like, you're man, you there. You're a woman, you there. You know what I mean? Like Neptune Pisces is like, but who are you? Even getting to know you, I still don't know you. So where do you go? We don't know yet. You should talk to a therapist and then talk to another therapist and figure out where you go. With Neptune and Aries, it's like, you pretty. You go to pretty people. Like, you ugly. You'll go with ugly people, you know? It's a little like more simplistic, I guess. So Aries Neptune, I think, can go both ways, right? Aries Neptune can say, right, Aries sets boundaries and draws the line in the sand and says like, I am autonomous. And so we have more boundaries now because this isn't Neptune and Pisces. But then Aries Neptune also goes, I don't know who I am. I don't know my own individual personality. So therefore I do not have one. And so therefore I am nothing. And we are all interconnected and I don't have any boundaries. Also, another big thing that I was thinking of is, and I've heard somebody talk about this, which it made me happy that somebody did talk about this because I felt like I was crazy thinking about it, but they validated me. Okay, anyways. So the idea of individualism I was thinking about coming up in a lot more strong ways, but also like Darwinism, but specifically like Darwinism or anti-Darwinism. We've kind of been more along the lines of anti-Darwinism, where it's like we want everybody to survive and we want to like give the best to everybody, or at least is what we try to do, I think. Aries, I feel like, is very Darwinism, like the strong will survive, and then Neptune kind of dilutes that. Only the strong will survive is not true in this day and age. Sometimes the strong don't survive, in all honesty, and you know what I mean? It's just whoever has more support and more resources, in all honesty, and more money, right? That's the rich survive, you know? And so the idea of this, you know, Darwinism concept, I think, is being dissolved, right? the idea of the strong survives does not exist anymore, you know? It's the rich that survive, right? And I wonder, I think we either go into more of the realm of, you know, rich will survive, or we'll go more into the realm of Darwinism and being, I can see there being like a flooding back of people trying to have that idea of evolution and only the strong will survive. I wonder if that will create a religion or ideology in its own that will come to power. I don't know. I could see that. That's very like Satanism as well, you know? Like Satanism, Darwinism. Like if you combine the two, that feels very Neptune in Aries to me. Also, I think that selfish things will be excused away for the need to conquer, right? Like also, I feel like the fact that we've changed Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America is very Neptune in Aries, right? Trump being president, he feels very Neptune in Aries. And, you know, again, excusing away these selfish things because, well, we need to conquer, we need to grow bigger, we need to go greater. And I'm disillusioned by the idea of how big and great and amazing and the best we can be, right? Being disillusioned by this need to be the best, the need to be number one. And even being number one isn't number one enough. You need to be number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? Also, I said lots of impulsive actions that leave everyone confused, right? Like these ideas of these big world things occurring simply because something happened on accident. Something could have possibly happened on accident. It did. It's Aries. Aries is clumsy. Aries whoops, trips, falls, does something on accident, doesn't think, just acts. You couldn't have possibly forgotten this or accidentally done that. No, it's Neptune and Aries, you know? I said with all the Gemini Aries energy, I do think that clumsiness will be the nation's demise. That's kind of what I said, which I could see that being true. In a good way, you know, it's from dreaming of a better world, Neptune and Pisces, to creating it, Neptune and Aries, putting those plans into action. Anything that you have planned and dreamed and dwelled about in the past 15 years, when Neptune goes into Aries, it's time to put that shit into action. I said revolutionizing of bluntness and honesty. Either Gen Beta will be so dishonest that it's like insane and wild at how much they lie, or they won't be able to be dishonest and they'll be like wildly truthful. It's just like a revolutionizing of bluntness. What does bluntness really mean? Do we like bluntness or not? Do we appreciate when people are, you know, making things prettier and tying them up in a bow? Or do we want things to be delivered to us in a more blunt and straightforward way? Again, I have this theory that everything will soon be recorded. And I know everything already is kind of like that, but I think that even mundane daily things, I think that every moment in our life, no matter what, will wind up being recorded. And if everything winds up getting recorded, then no matter what, the blunt truth will come out, which is very Aries, Neptune, very Uranus, Gemini, very Aquarius, Pluto, right? With everything being recorded, there's no place to hide. Okay, I'm recording this while driving. I just got food with my dogs. We're just hanging out. They're so cute. Oh my God, they're literally adorable. Okay. Anyways, so I'm adding this in because I was thinking about like more specifically what I'm thinking as far as Neptune and Aries. And I was like, life subscriptions. That would make sense. That would be very Pluto and Aquarius, Neptune and Aries, Uranus and Gemini. You subscribe to a person's life. So you don't just follow their Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is. You literally get to live your life through somebody else's eyes for that day that you choose, right? Like, so you subscribe to different people's lives, and those people have like Big Brother cameras set up. So all, you know, they get all angles of their life at all times, and then you pay to watch that person's life. That is Neptune and Aries. That is the total dissolution of individual boundaries and individual life, right? I really do feel like people take influencer to the next step where, right, like you're a fly on the wall of someone's life. You're not just seeing the content that they want you to see. You're seeing all of their content. You're seeing all of their life, completely dissolving all boundaries from what we once had. An individualistic human life is completely gone. I really think this combination is very potent and very intense, and I think we're going to take this influencer thing an extra step farther. Aries is also like conflict fighting, right? So, oh my God, I'm onto this even more. Neptune and Pisces, we got to see the filtered view of what the influencers want us to see. It's still filtered. It's this dreamlike state, right? But then in Neptune and Aries, we see the real grit of people. We see the real conflicts that these people have behind closed doors. We're seeing the real infighting, the real issues, the real tension, the real conflict. We're now not just dissolving barriers as far as look at what I'm eating, look at the vacation I'm going. No, look at this really serious relationship argument I'm having. Like, I think people will be able to see that kind of stuff. Uranus and Gemini, right? These little daily doses, these little daily little things of life are going to be almost like exploited, right? Like Uranus, like that's very Aquarian energy, is like exploiting, right? I really think I'm onto something. I really think that there will be these like life subscriptions, and you better bet that I am subscribing to some. Like, and it would just be a way of making your life so profitable. I think that this generation, like our generation just in general, like wants to just make money from being alive, right? Very Neptune and Aries as well. Like, fuck it, I'm lazy. Just make money from being alive, being an Aries, right? And so I feel like that's the next step for making money, just literally being alive, not even editing it, filtering it, just literally 24/7 Big Brother cameras. I feel like somebody's gonna see this and take this idea, because this is like what's going to happen. I also think there'll be a heavy decline of children and marriages. We're already seeing that, but I think it'll be even more true because Aries is opposite Libra, marriages, relationships, and it's square Cancer Capricorn, the mother and father, right? The parent. So I think that Neptune and Aries is going to be, we're going to see a rise in just like roommates and single people and people being in relationships but not getting married, people being married but not having kids, so on and so forth. I said it's going to be more about the necessary and the survival than the filtered perfection of Pisces. So we're going to put away all our perfectly coiffed daily routines and exchange that for how to survive in a war refugee-ridden town. I feel like we're going to have to learn some basic survival skills for the first time. I do. So I was watching quite a bit of content about Neptune and Aries, and somebody said that they could totally see Neptune and Aries being like very like Kanye West vibe fashion. And they're like, his fashion gives very Neptune and Aries vibes. And I just thought it was interesting that they said that, because he does have an Aries midheaven, and with Neptune going over on top of his midheaven coming up, that makes a lot of sense that he's kind of like ahead of his time, because what he already does is very like with Venus and Taurus in the 10th house, with Aries in the 10th house. So we have that Venus with that Venus in the 10th house and the Aries, right? So fashion is probably going to look more like that. He's probably right, you know? This is like your basic survival things being AI. Like, this is like simulated food, simulated eating, simulated smelling, simulated hearing, simulated taste. Like, I don't know. I feel like simulated people, holograms, all that kind of stuff. I just feel like it will be very extreme. Oh, I think also bringing back the idea of Darwinism. What are we going to do with the individuals that do not know how to look after themselves? I think that will be a big, big theme. Neptune and Aries. Aries is all about independence. Neptune is all about codependence. I don't have an answer. I'm not saying an answer. I'm just saying that will be a core question and a core theme, and that might even be something that causes wars or like a lot of conflict. So those are some of my predictions or themes or things that I think that might come up during this Neptune and Aries period. Let me know your predictions down below. This is definitely not a comprehensive list, but these are my thoughts. Do you guys understand where I'm coming from? Do you see these themes? Do you think these will come to play? I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. But just to round out this video really, really quickly, I'm going to teach you how to find your Neptune transit or your Neptune fortune moving forward with this Neptune and Aries time. Okay, so this is something that I've already explained a few times, but if you haven't heard and you do not know and you're finding this channel, let me explain it to you. So I use what's called the Placidus system. So most people are taught using the whole sign system as of right now, at least. So in the Placidus system, the house cusps are different. Not everybody has the same house cusp rulers like you do in whole sign. In whole sign, all Taurus risings have the same house cusp ruler setup. In Placidus, Taurus risings do not all have the same house cusp setup. They can, but it's probably more rare because they have individualistic degrees. So when you're trying to figure out how does Neptune and Aries affect me directly, you need to find out where 0 degrees in Aries falls in your chart. Okay? In order to do that, we can do that in a few ways. If you know how to read a circular chart, it's going to be very easy. You find the glyph of Aries wherever your chart is and kind of at that little 0 degree mark, and that will be the house that will be affected by this Neptune in Aries transit. In Placidus, chances are you do not have a house cusp ruler at 0 degrees Aries. It's actually probably more rare, if I'm being honest with you. You probably have a house cusp degree somewhere in the middle, right? And so pay attention to the house cusp degree because that will tell you when Neptune changes houses for you. Because just because Neptune is entering Aries does not mean that Neptune is entering a new house for you in Placidus. It doesn't whole sign, but not in Placidus. So it's good to find out what degree your Neptune will move into the new house, depending on what house cusp degree your Aries house cusp ruler is at, okay? So basically, let's just do this really simple with Danny DeVito. You know, I watched Matilda recently, and so let's find out on the circular chart where his Neptune in Aries is going to transit and what house is going to affect him. Here's his chart. Try and figure it out. Okay, so his Neptune in Aries transit will be going through his 3rd house. So he will be experiencing Neptune transiting the 3rd house. And he will not be experiencing Neptune changing the houses until 18 degrees Aries, which isn't for another like 5 years. So he is going to be having his Neptune in Aries transit for the first chunk of time be in his 3rd house, and then for the second chunk of time be in his 4th house. Now, if you do not know how to read circular charts, there's a way to do it with the house cusp ruler. But in my opinion, I actually think it's harder. I think it's easier to literally just, find this symbol in your chart, wherever it is, look at the little house cusp ruler number, and then you're done. But if that is too overwhelming for you, you can go to the house cusp rulers or the position of houses graph. Let's actually take another example since we've already done Danny DeVito. Let's do, for the fuck of it, I never use this chart, but since we've been talking, unfortunately, so much about America, oh no. You know what? That's interesting. It makes sense that, okay, so I'm looking at America's chart. Let's use America's chart as an example of how to find where Aries is going to be going through in the house cusp rulers. Okay, so let's pull up the position of houses. And now you will see that for America's chart, we have Aries coming through in the 5th house cusp ruler at 25 degrees. So that means that 0 degrees Aries is taking place in house 4 because it's in between 25 degrees Pisces and 25 degrees Aries, okay? Neptune in Aries will be taking place throughout America's 4th house. And then at the very, very tail end, when it hits 25 degrees, it will be going into the 5th house, but that's only for the last few years. I find this very interesting because it makes sense that Aries is going through the 4th house with America because we had a civil war. It was on our home turf. It was on our home grounds. It was not in other territory or enemy territory or anything of the sort. So whatever will take place in this Neptune and Aries time is going to take place, the heart of it, I think will actually take place in America. For the whole world, I just mean in general. And any other energy that has 4th house Aries, it'll be a more like that country-centered time. You know what I mean? So it makes sense if war physically happens on that turf, right? Now let's do one final example for you to figure out, and I will not tell you, and you can find it for me, and then I will tell you if you are right or wrong. You know what? Screw it. For this final example, let's use my little puppy Pixie's chart. Now, this is my dog's Pixie's chart. What house or houses will be affected by this Neptune and Aries transit for her personally? And I'll give you a second. All right, and you are correct if you answered the 9th house and the 10th house. Starts off in the 9th house, and halfway through it hits that 10th house, which makes sense. Her mom's an astrologer. So she's definitely got that influence on her for sure. But yes, that is my very long but hopefully comprehensive video about Neptune, and especially Neptune going into Aries during this 2025 year. That was a weird way to say it, but I think my brain is malfunctioning because I've been talking so long that I think I am slowly shutting down and unable to verbalize things. But yes, it's that time. It's that time again. Okay. If you know my lives, you know I hit that time. But yeah, so that is my whole video. Again, check out my video next week, which I'll be posting about, which talks about Neptune transits through the houses. But yes, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know, are you excited about this transit or not? Are you nervous about it or not? What's your thoughts about it? I'm always curious to know. I'm always curious to see what to read what you guys have to say. I really do appreciate your guys' insight. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope to see you in my next video about Neptune transits. And yeah, all right, bye.